I think a good place to start, and I'm going to start from a personal experience, would be around ADHD. It seems to me, I've been one who's been diagnosed with it early in life. Um, and as I look at the world today, it seems like everybody has ADHD, which kind of makes me think maybe nobody has ADHD. I would like to hear from you about kind of your experience with this and like how you look at the problem in America with every kid now having ADHD.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a controversial topic. And of course, I'm going to speak from experience, but it varies from person to person. But I do have a very strong opinion in this because of my personal experience. And then as a teacher working with kids that were quote unquote ADHD students. So um, I've always had this like very lively personality, excited about everything, lots of energy, kind of the typical kid, right? That's running around up and down, can't really sit still, love to talk. And so these are sort of like the aspects of my personality that make me who I am today. But when I was little, I went to, 10 different schools in 7 different countries. And over again, my parents would hear from teachers, she's pretty disruptive. She talks a lot. It doesn't matter where we sit her. She's going to talk. She can't sit still. She's a good girl and she gets good grades, but it's, she would do better if you get her tested. She probably has ADHD. And so again, a lot of people experience this. A lot of parents that I talk to are like, oh yeah, this sounds very familiar. And so, I went to different doctors and they were like, yep, definitely. She checks all the boxes. She has ADHD. Let's medicate her. I was pretty young. I think I was like 8. And so they put me on the pill and on Ritalin at the time. And we went through like different ones. And what it did was it really tampered my personality. So all these aspects that I'm telling you that make me who I am today, they were kind of like tamped down. And so I was less disruptive for sure, but I didn't feel good. Like it didn't feel like I was this, bubbly kid that I always was. And all the things that I love to do, it kind of like make me numb. And I would hear over and over again. And of course, my parents did this with the best intentions. Because that's what the doctors would tell them and the teachers would tell them. But really, they never questioned or they never went, and we talk about this a lot now that we're adults, like I'm an adult, but they never really stopped to ask questions or do their own research. They sort of just followed through the motions. And so years went by and they would keep bumping up the dose and bumping up the dose. And every place that I went to, they were like, yep, she needs to continue taking this. But really, I went through so many years of my childhood with this sort of like mask on. And it got to a point where I was like, old enough that I was like, I don't want to take this anymore. But I had not only like the physiological addiction to it, because as you know, like many of these drugs have this component that's the same main component as cocaine. And so, yeah, it's highly addictive. But not only that, I think for me, the hardest thing was sort of the psychological aspect of it. For so many years, I would hear from parents and teachers that I was very disruptive and that if I didn't take this pill, then, I would get in trouble. I would do impulsive things. My friends would get mad at me because I wouldn't let them talk and like all these things over and over again. I even started to believe that it's what made me intelligent and that I was able to do all the things that I did because of the pill. So even, when it got to the point where I could make my own decisions, it was really, really difficult to get off the pill. And so mostly because of this psychological component. And then finally, I was able to do it. It took a lot of work. It was very, very challenging. Probably one of the most challenging things that I've had to do in my life to get out of this. And so once I did, I realized, wait a second, all these years, like all this energy that I have, it's very common. Like this is, kids have a lot of energy. And yes, I was disrupting and I was standing up and I was doing all these things, but really that's just what regular kids are meant to do, right? The problem is that, and we can talk about, the traditional school system, but it makes you, since you're very little, like have to sit down and not wiggle and be still for so many hours and not talk and not move. And like all those things are like counterintuitive to what we know about kids and their development. And so what happens is, of course, more and more you get kids like me and like probably you, that are not meant to fit into this mold of having to sit down still, quiet and pay attention for hours. Like that's just not congruent with what we know about how we perform and how we learn and how we develop. And so these kids easily get labeled as ADHD so that it's easier to manage for the teacher. The parents have an easier time at home, but it doesn't really mean that we're ADHD, right? And so again, once I was able to leave and get off this medicine, I realized, wait, all these aspects of my personality that I was told were negative are actually really positive. Like, this is what makes me, have this passion to do the things that I do and talk about all these things in the way that I do, and the energy and the wanting to work on this. Like, all this comes from just my personality. This is who I am. And I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone on this medicine when I was little. Like how would I have turned out? Like, what are some things that I would have maybe tried that I didn't because, I was so focused on this other stuff. And so then I became a teacher, and it really like got to me when I would get all these parents telling me like, my child is super disruptive, right? I'm like, well, not really. I mean, they have a lot of energy, but it's just like, well, yeah, but all the other teachers are complaining, and at home he's like super disruptive and he's always moving and this and that. We need to put him on the medicine. I need you to sign off. And I would be like, well, no, I'm not comfortable with this because I don't think your child has ADHD. I don't think we should medicate. And it would really come back to me. And so it happened a lot. And it's difficult because parents are like, well, the doctors are saying that this is what I'm supposed to do. And so what I've come to realize is that it's not like the doctors have bad intentions. There is a whole market behind this problem. And again, it's a little bit controversial because I'm sure that there are some kids that actually do need it, or adults that do need it, but I think it's like a small percent. And it's become mainstream. And this is not even talking about how people use it in college for other purposes that haven't even been diagnosed. I'm just talking about the ones that are actually like diagnosed when they're little. I think that is just part of what we're going to talk about today. Like this system that we have in place that enforces things that are not natural for kids and that hasn't changed in a long time, and that kids have different personalities and different ways of learning and different ways of developing that we just have to find what's right for them instead of medicating them and then just making them go numb for all these years. So it's a complex topic, but that's sort of my experience. And so I kind of said no to a lot of these kids that wanted for me to sign off on these papers. And I wanted to talk about this experience because I feel like hopefully some parents listening to this before they go ahead, because again, it's a lot of parents get this request to medicate their kids. It's like, you think about it twice before you blindly trust the doctors, before you blindly trust the teachers. Really ask, is it that my kid really has this, or is this just his personality or her personality and they're just not in the right environment? So if you question that, I think that more kids would probably not go in this medicine, that then it's really hard to be, off it.
Do you have any thoughts on, you're a mother of a son? Let's just say a doctor told you and your son was brought up in your gifts and said, yeah, I think he might need some medication for his ADHD. Do you know where the line is? Like, as a teacher and having watched so many kids where you go, well, maybe he actually does, or maybe this is just something we're going to deal with. Like, where do you draw your line for your son?
I actually, again, I would get this request a lot from parents, and there was not one case that I was like, yep, this one, I do think that they have ADHD. Like, I actually don't think, I think it's, again, the minority. The problem is that it's become very mainstream at this point, and it's hard to convince parents about it. But I just think that they're being kids. For my kid, there's no way that you can. I mean, I think that. I mean, and my child is very young; he's 10 months old. But I think that it would take a lot for me to say yes, he needs medication. Like, I feel like I want for him to be active. I have this whole idea that I don't want for him to be in a structured environment until he's like 7 or 8. I want for him to be out exploring, releasing all this energy that is part of his development. And so really, I mean, unless I don't even know what would take for me to be like, yes, I need to medicate him. Because I feel like there's so many avenues and so many different learning experiences that he can engage in. If he's very active like me, which there's a big possibility that he will, you can do more hands-on things. You can do, learning through projects or being outside. I love this idea of like forest schools where kids are outside running around for almost all day, and they're releasing energy. And I can guarantee that most of those kids are not diagnosed with ADHD. Why? Because they're in the environment where they're supposed to be running around and moving all day and getting tired and, And so I don't know. I mean, I think I don't have an answer for this other than I would really question things, and I encourage parents to do this too. It's like, really be skeptical. Like, says who? Like, observe your child and yeah. I mean, I don't know what your experience was like. Like, do you think you actually had ADHD, or do you think you were also one of those people that was mislabeled?
No, I think it's a lot of kind of what you said. I mean, even as you're saying this, like I still struggle with sitting down and being quiet. It's just not my nature. I don't think it'll ever be my nature. And for you to say like leaning into those gifts, there was a period where I thought, man, something is maybe wrong with me. But then I know what we're about to talk about. The idea that every kid's job on this planet is to sit down, shut up, and pay attention to the teacher and not move an inch. That seems almost like military. And I think we're going to talk about how we got to this being the thing. But I know this for a fact, taking that medication made me feel terrible afterwards. It made me feel really fidgety and just in my head, thousands of thoughts and things that I hated. I didn't eat well. There's just so many side effects that way made it clear over time, like this doesn't seem like a good solution either.
hmm Totally. And in the amount of kids that go through that, it's just, it's insane. It's insane. It's
And it's
insane.
growing.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, because again, the environments are getting more and more restrictive with time, and kids have to release this energy. Like it's just they have to find a way. And there's this whole notion of like school starting too early. And if you look at the research, like kids should actually be doing like playing outdoors and like doing exercise and actually moving first thing in the morning in order to be able to then sit down or not sit down, but then learn anything. Like if you want for their brains to wake up and to actually consume, they need to be moving a lot in the morning, particularly. And so I feel like this is going to continue to become a problem if we continue to have kids sit down since 7 a.m. quietly, trying to pay attention. Like, of course, more and more kids are going to be diagnosed with ADHD.